Populism of all sorts is rampant worldwide. My institute has outlined the causes elsewhere, but in most cases, the populism is focused on a leader. Leaders are transient. In Britain, our populism focused on a policy, Brexit, which may be permanent. This policy has become the defining feature of the main party of government in Britain for around 200 years, the Conservative Party. But then there is the populism of the left. And here the main opposition party in Britain for the last 100 years, the Labour Party, has been taken over by left-wing populism. The Conservatives calculate that they can force people to elect them despite worry over Brexit because Jeremy Corbyn is the alternative. The Labour Party leadership calculate they can combine traditional Labour support around issues like the NHS with the Remain voters who hate Brexit despite fear about the Labour leader. In other words, both parties want to win on the basis that whatever you dislike of what they're offering, the alternative is worse. The truth is the public aren't convinced either main party deserved to win the election outright. They're peddling two sets of fantasies, and both as majority governments pose a risk it would be unwise for the country to take. This is a moment to set aside the fatigue, to understand we're taking a decision not just about a government, but about our future, and therefore to think deeply. Then at some later point, and not too later, we must set about the urgent task of reconstructing the sensible mainstream of British politics. Otherwise, this laboratory experiment in populism running riot will end very badly for our nation. All the promises people are making on spending, and let's be clear again, what suddenly happened on spending is come back in fashion. But there's no rationale to it. It's not as if suddenly the British economy is doing so much better that it's obvious we can turn on the taps. No, it's just that people have decided, the Labour Party because it likes spending, the Conservative Party because they want to sweeten the pill of Brexit, they just decided to turn the taps on. But I mean, this is to treat people, you know, like fools. I mean, you're just saying that we're going to spend this money. All of it depends on what happens with Brexit. So far as the election's concerned, it's pretty obvious the Liberal Democrats can't win and form a government. Now, I'm not saying I think there will be constituencies in which voting Liberal Democrat in circumstances where it's straight Lib Dem Tory fight. You know, where there may be circumstances which, you know, I can completely understand if people decide to vote Lib Dem. The problem always with the Lib Dems is, you know, they're not capable of forming a government. And if your politics is about governing, you know, that's a problem. If there was ever a chance of Labour forming a majority, I think, you know, if the polls are right, there isn't. But if there was, it would have to change significantly the implementation of any of those pledges, because they're just, you know, if you take the spending pledges alone, you know, there are a lot of them.
Are you still behind a movement like this? Are you still throwing your hat in the ring?
I'm throwing my hat in the ring, but I haven't.
Well, you were for a while, right?
No.
Were you?
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe your hat was in the ring, yeah, you know, whether you were throwing it or not, I don't know.
Well, I'm getting confused with this analogy, but I had the hat at some point I had it somewhere vaguely near the ring, but anyway.
But I mean, should we still be talking about the formation of a new centre party?
Well, I think what we should definitely still talk about, as I do in the last part of my speech, is how you reconstruct the sensible mainstream of British politics. Look, it's a pretty weird thing when you've got someone like Luciana Berger being hounded out of the Labour Party. Anyone who knows her, she's a totally reasonable, mainstream, progressive politician. And Philip Hammond, who after all was Chancellor of the Exchequer a few months back, I think the last time I was here he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Philip's not even a left-wing Tory, by the way. Okay, he's now expelled. So tell me what's not strange about that. You've got reasonable people in both parties, including some of these independent Tories, who anyone who knows them knows they're very reasonable people, but by the way, they are actually Conservatives. And then you've got Labour people who, you know, feel out of sorts with where they are in the Labour Party. So at some point, something's got to give, otherwise our politics will pull itself to the extremes and stay there. And that's when we become a laboratory experiment that's dangerous.